Is dispensationalism what Jesus Christ had in mind when he said to his disciples in Matthew 24, "When ye shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet," or is something else what Jesus Christ means? Now notice, the dispensationalists always claim to take prophecy literally. That's their great boast. We take the Bible literally. You amillennialists, you spiritualize the Bible far too much. But do they really? And do they really take this prophecy literally? Notice first, according to the dispensationalists, the 70 weeks of Daniel 9 means 490 years. It says 70 weeks. And they say that means 490 years. Now the chapter tells us that this period of 70 weeks, whatever it might mean, is divided into three different parts. First of all, there are 7 weeks, verse 25. Then there are 62 weeks, again, verse 25. And then there is one final week in verse 27. Do your maths. 7 plus 62 plus 1 equals 70. And they say those 70 weeks means 490 years. Why? Because a week is a prophetic week, which is a week of years, which means 7 years. 70 times 7 years equals 490 years. But did you notice, beloved, the sleight of hand? 70 weeks equals 70 weeks of years. How is that, I ask, a literal interpretation? Where in the Bible does a week equal 7 years? If you took this literally, it would be 49 days. But 49 days is not enough time for anything to happen in the dispensationalist scheme of things, and therefore they say it's 490 years. But there is no passage in the Bible that I have been able to find where a week equals 7 years. Now this word week in Daniel 9 literally is sevens. It doesn't say days, it doesn't say months, it doesn't say years, it just says sevens or periods of 7. So it's 7 sevens. We have that word sevens in Deuteronomy 16 verse 9. Deuteronomy 16 verse 9. Here they're speaking about the feasts of the Lord. 7 weeks, or literally 7 sevens, shalt thou number unto thee. Begin to number the 7 weeks, or 7 sevens, from such time as thou beginnest to put the sickle to the corn. There, in the calendar of Israel, the 7 sevens were 7 actual weeks between the two feasts. Not 7 sevens being 49 years, or something like that. So, they don't take it literally as far as the numbers are concerned. But there's worse. Second, dispensationalists say that the 70th week does not occur immediately after the 69th week. That is a major difficulty with their whole scheme of interpretation, and shows us that they do not take this prophecy literally as they claim. Here's how they explain it. First, there are 7 weeks, a period of time to rebuild Jerusalem after the captivity. Then there are 62 weeks. That is the period of time until the coming of Christ, where it says, until Messiah the Prince. Verse 25 of Daniel 9. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem, and there's a lot of debate over exactly which command that means, which king, and so on and so forth, and yet the dates to work out exactly correctly, but do that as we may. Unto the Messiah the Prince, and again there are a lot of debate about what period in the life of Messiah the Prince is meant, his birth, or his baptism, or his death. Again, we leave that for them to work out. Shall be 7 weeks, so the 7 weeks is a shorter period of time for the building of Jerusalem, and 62 weeks, so 62 weeks. 62 plus 7, 69 weeks until the coming of Jesus Christ. You would expect then, from a basic reading of Daniel 9, you would expect then that immediately after the 69th week, you would have the 70th week. But no, that's not what dispensationalists say. Something unexpected happened at the end of the 69th week. And major dispensationalists say the prophetic clock stopped. It stopped ticking. It's as if God had a stopwatch, and the stopwatch was clicking or ticking for all of those years, and then suddenly he pressed stop or pause, and we have to wait sometime later for the 70th week to begin. And why did this stopwatch stop ticking temporarily? Because the Jews rejected Jesus Christ. That's why. The Jews rejected Jesus Christ. That was not part of the plan. That was not supposed to happen. Did God know about this and choose to keep it hidden from Daniel? Or did God not know about this because he doesn't really know the future? Those two possibilities are probably as bad as each other. One makes God to be deceitful, the other makes God to be less than omniscient. But the 69th week, there's a pause, and sometime later we will have the beginning of the 70th week. So we have 69 weeks, a long pause, the clock has stopped ticking, and then we'll have one final week of prophetic history at the end. And during this long pause, what is happening according to dispensationalism? Well, the church is being gathered. The Gentiles are being brought in. They call this a parenthesis, a set of brackets in God's plan. Because God's plan was always to deal with the Jews. They are his people. But when the Jews rejected the king that God sent to them, then he turned his back upon the Jews for a time. He took up the church as his people, the Gentiles mainly as his people, and then sometime later, after the end of the period of the Gentiles, after the church age, he will go back to dealing with the Jews. Now I ask you, is that literally what Daniel 9 says? And let me give you an illustration to explain how absurd that is. Let's say that you lend me €1,000, and I say to you, I will pay you back after 7 weeks. At the end of the 6th week, you come to me and say, just to remind you, next week you owe me that €1,000. And I say, oh no, I will pay you after the seventh week, but the seventh week will not happen until 1,000 years from now. Would you say I was an honest person? If I had this hidden clause in there in our contract, I will pay you back after an undisclosed period, a pause between the 69th and the 70th week, between the 6th and the 7th week of our contract, would you not say I was a con man and a swindler if I did that to you? Of course you would. And God is not dishonest. God does not say in Daniel 9, well, there's 69 weeks, and then a long period of time, and then sometime later we'll get to the 70th week. No, he says in verse 24, 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city. And that word determined means eternally determined in God's eternal counsel. It's not literal according to the number of weeks. They make it 490 years. It's not literal because the 69th week is not immediately followed by the 70th week. And there's more that they read into the text which simply is not there. The dispensationalists say that at the end of the church age, the church will be raptured out of the world, and then the prophetic clock will begin to tick again, and then the 70th week shall begin. Do you find such a rapture in Daniel chapter 9? I do not. When the church has been safely taken out of the way by means of the rapture, and the 70th week is able to begin, then they say, Antichrist will come. He will come in the 70th week when the church is no longer upon the earth. And they get that from verse 27. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. And who shall confirm the covenant? The Antichrist. That's the view of the dispensationalists. The Antichrist, and they say that he is, in verse 26, the prince, the people of the prince who will destroy the city and the sanctuary. He is the Antichrist. He shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. Who are the many? Israel, the nation of Israel. So the Antichrist will arise, and for a time will seem to be the friend of Israel. He will enter into an alliance or a covenant or an agreement with the nation of Israel for 1 week, but in the middle of the week, we are told, verse 27, he will break his covenant with Israel. He will cause sacrifice and oblation to cease, and he will defile the temple in Jerusalem. And if you ask, what temple in Jerusalem? Oh, the rebuilt temple in Jerusalem, which will be rebuilt sometime in our future, in the 70th week, after the rapture, or maybe even before the rapture, as a sign the rapture is coming soon. So we're looking for, say the dispensationalists, a temple rebuilt in Jerusalem by the Jews, and in that temple, the Antichrist, who will come in the 70th week, which is yet to come, he will put the abomination of desolation and cause sacrifice and oblation to cease. And notice, in this new temple, there will be sacrifices. That's another objectionable thing about dispensationalism. They say the temple will be rebuilt. The Jews will begin to offer sacrifices again. They try and say it's a sacrifice of memorial for what Jesus Christ did on the cross. But the whole book of Hebrews shows them, or ought to show them, that there are no more sacrifices for sin, because Jesus Christ died on the cross once and for all. Now all of that is not to be found in Daniel 9.